it's Reagan and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. This reading vlog I'm super excited about because I'm gonna be reading some books that are within one of my favorite specific subgenres of fantasy, and I just have a feeling these books hopefully will be loved by me. But without further ado, let's go ahead and chat about the two books I hope to read over the course of this week. So the trope and setup that I'm hoping to fully embrace this week is basically lovable idiots going out on quests. I love unlikely groups of people working together. I always think it's fun and rompy. So I have two books on my TBR that I feel like kind of fit within this category. The first is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. This is about our main character who basically joins an adventuring guild to sort of get out of his crumbling hometown, and they get wrapped up in an unlikely conspiracy. Sounds like a great setup. I've heard literally nothing but great things about this. I also feel like generally this is kind of an underrated series, so I'm looking forward to checking it out myself. From there, I also want to read Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. This is the sequel to Godkiller, which again centers a quest with lots of likable characters. The writing was luscious. I found the world to be really interesting and the character connections to be compelling throughout the first installment. So I'm really looking forward to see how the story is going to continue to progress throughout book two. This is also a new release for this year, and I'm trying to get back into the habit of reading new releases for 2024 so I can chat about them as well. So this is my TBR for this video. We've got some lovable idiots going out on quests, and I could not be more excited about it. In terms of what I'm going to start with, I think we're just gonna jump right into Ninth Reign. Basically, starting today, I need to make lunch and finish up some work, but then from there, I'm cluing in on this book, and I truly could not be more excited about it. I've been reading a lot of sci-fi recently, which I have honestly been loving. I've been in very much a sci-fi headspace, but I'm looking to get back into fantasy and just read my classic medieval setups, you know? So that's that. Welcome to the start of this vlog. I'm pumped to be reading these books, and I will keep you guys posted, and hopefully I will love them. It's the afternoon, which obviously means time for an afternoon coffee, even though I shouldn't have one, but we all know the drill. I've been doing this every day now for months again. I got off the afternoon coffee, I got on the afternoon coffee, and I'm going to start my book as well whilst I enjoy this cup of joe. So stay blessed. Hi friends, let's do a reading update because I have been reading. That's right, I have read 70 pages of The Ninth Reign, and so far I'm really liking this book. I was picking this book up because I was like, oh, it seems like a quest-centered story, jaunty, classic, all of these things. And it is a quest-centered story with unlikely characters working together, true, but it's also more unique. There's more happening with the style and the setting and the world than I was anticipating, and learning about this world has been very fun so far in the first 70 pages, and the writing style, very good. It almost reads kind of like an anime. I don't know. I don't know how that makes sense, or maybe I just visualize it in animated form because it's visually very interesting to me. But this book is set in a fantasy world where there was something called the God Tree, which used to be in existence, but it has since gone away. And this has resulted in a few very significant things. First and foremost, there were a people called the Abora who took the sap of this God Tree, and it basically made them immortal, vampire vibes. And when this tree disappeared, guess what they did? They turned to humans because they realized that the blood of humans also kept them being immortal. But to their surprise, consuming human blood also gave them something called the Crimson, fever, I think it's called. And it's basically killing off all of these once immortal individuals. And so these once great Abora civilizations have been decimated. And also Abora and human relations also decimated for very clear and obvious reasons. The first main character we're introduced to is called Tormalin, or Tor the Oathless, and he is an Abora. He is this vampire thing, and he's screw it, I'm leaving the city of my ancestors. It's crumbling, it's falling apart. I don't know how much time I have left, and I want to see the world. And so he decides to take up arms with our other main character, Vintage. And Vintage comes from a well-to-do family, and she herself is a spinster, and her family has run this vineyard for a long time, hence the name Vintage. But she wants to go out into the world and see things as well, because she has been a scholar for most of her life, and with the disappearance of this tree god, other things have begun to happen within this realm too, outside of like what has occurred to the Abora. Basically, the wilds have slowly been creeping and taking over things like magical, dangerous forest vibes, but in combination with that, there's also these strange, slightly specter-like creatures that have been coming in the wilderness. We're not only dangerous, but also destructive, but they also have perhaps unknown knowledge to like what happens to this god tree. So Vintage and now Tor basically travel across the land, taking on these monsters to help people out, but also to gain treasure and knowledge in their own like personal quest and journey. I said it kind of reminds me of an anime for like 2 reasons. First off, Tor is such a vibe. He's exactly what you would want a jaunty vampire-esque character to be. He gives a Storian from Baldur's Gate vibes. He gives like Hal if he was kind of a morally gray vampire. He's handsome. He wears one earring. He has strange combinations of outfits that feel glamorous, and it's just like, this is the type of vampire I want in a book. Vintage as a main character, she's funny, she's smart, they're quippy together, and their camaraderie within 70 pages, I'm already sold. The world is super interesting, and the monsters that we have run into kind of remind me of like Faceless from Spirited Away, but if they're more violent, like it's this sort of like blobby-like thing that consumes. It's not inherently trying to be evil, but by nature it's just like a violent thing that exists, which I think is pretty interesting. And then alongside Vintage and Tor's chapters, we've also gotten chapters of another character who I'm really excited to see more of, who is a witch. So we have vampires, witches, monsters, all of these things in this world, but it feels really slightly different than what I feel like I typically read with this setup. So I'm really liking the aesthetics of this world, the characters of this world, but the setup and structure of it is like exactly what I wanted, but it's in a variant I wasn't even anticipating to have been given. So it's like, I'm into it. I'm really into it so far. Writing style, as I said, is good. I quickly read this 60 pages, and I'm so looking forward to see what in the world is going to happen next, because I know there's a lot more story to encounter and for it to unfold, but so far so good. I'm definitely gonna read more of this today, but I'm gonna make dinner soon because I'm actually starving. So there's that. That's a reading update. I forgot to vlog dinner, but I am vlogging us getting back into Drive to Survive. We haven't watched the newest season 6. We have been marathoning it the past couple days, and it's been so much fun. It's now time for me to do my skincare, get in bed, and get back to reading Ninth Reign, because I'm actually really into that book so quickly. So I'm excited to see how far I can get tonight and just like how the rest of the story is gonna unfold, you know? Hello everyone, it's lunchtime, good morning. I know, I owe y'all a check-in because I've actually read so much of Ninth Reign, and fantastic news. It's so good. It's so unique. So it's like what I was wanting from a quest story, but it's also so much more than I could have ever anticipated. I'm just like having such a good time reading it, but it's lunchtime. And so we got to start vlogging because the day is burning away. So I thought we could make lunch together, eat lunch, and then I'll do a reading update, and we will get back on the same page. So today I'm making a quick lunch. I am making some tuna salad and some crackers because it's easy, tasty, delicious. You get the dill. You get the dill. We're using dill in the recipe. I also have a shallot throw in there. Cucumber, and that's it. Easy peasy. Let's get chopping. Tuna salad is complete, and I just have it with these sea salt and chive crackers. I'll probably have an apple too, but I don't feel like cutting that right now, so here we are. Hello, post-lunch reading update of my book, which, spoiler alert, I'm really liking, and I'm gonna go sit down and read more of it now. But I've read 170 pages of The Ninth Reign, and I can say with my whole heart, this book is both exactly what I wanted and nothing I could have anticipated. It's such a unique world, the characters, how the story is coming together. I'm obsessed, and it's also weird in all of my favorite ways. I like strange fantasy worlds that kind of have this sort of hybrid quality to them, and this also is that. But let me take a step back. Let's talk about this book. So obviously we've talked about vintage, we've talked about Tor. One's a vampire, one is like a rich, adventuring spinster who is traveling out into the world to try to unpack and uncover the mystery behind these like ancient creatures and current monsters that roam the land. These monsters and creatures are a product of this like evil invading force that has been like trying to take over this land for a long time, but they haven't been seen in like generations and generations, and they're called like the worms or the worm people, and they basically act as parasites, taking over bodies and treating them like hosts. They're very dangerous, and Tor's people, the Oberon, were basically the main reason that they were not able to get a foothold in this land. They kept them at bay. They had these magic beasts that they rode. Obviously they live for a long time. They're ultra powerful. All of these things are important when you're fighting a dangerous monster. But as we all know, the Oberon are much diminished. There's this blood plague, we don't know what's going on, and surprise, surprise, maybe the worm people are coming back because we're seeing some prophetic dreams, people are nervous, the weird things are happening, but we don't fully know. But that's like important context from the past because it's circling back in the future. So Tor and vintage, but alas, we have another main character who's entered the fold, and she is a fell witch, which I already mentioned. So fell witches in this world basically can pull energy from people and then turn that energy into like fire. And fell witches are treated terribly. If a woman is found to have magic, they're basically taken to this safe place where they're kept so they can't hurt themselves or anyone else. But in reality, they're basically exploited for their fire to like keep industry moving. Like it's like industrial revolution vibes. There's so much happening in this book, but it all works so well. So we have another main character named Noon, who is a fell witch, or fell Noon, and she has fled captivity. She has been trapped for 10 years. She has a dark past. She's obviously not happy in her present, and she has these dark and disturbing dreams, and she's like, I gotta get out of here. So she flees and runs into our other main characters, and now they're all gallivanting together in the wilderness. I could not emphasize enough how much I'm enjoying all of these character interactions between these three main characters. And I also love through all the different chapters, we're kind of following each one. I wasn't expecting this to be kind of a multi-POV situation, but it is. And I feel like it allows me to feel connected and interested in all of these different characters' lives super quickly. So we have this like very clear group of people gallivanting across the land for like academic archaeological reasons. That's like their primary reason for being out and about. But obviously we know in the back of our mind that something larger is clearly going to happen impacting these characters. But even in the meantime, this sort of archaeological academic lean is so interesting. We have these like sub chapters, these little excerpts from journals and letters at the beginning of chapters, giving us more insight into the world, but also more insight into these characters' pasts, and it's so good. We also get chapters from like other tertiary characters too. Like we're all over the place in ways that I just was not expecting. Great characters, a fascinating world. I'm interested in like the setup plot that I know is gonna be overrun by like a massive additional plot. I love these prophecies. I love these ancient monsters that kind of give steampunk vibes, kind of give weird alien monster vibes within a fantasy landscape and setting. We got witches, we got vampires. We've got so much happening, and the writing style is so good. I'm truly swept away. So, you know, so far so great, if I'm being honest. Delivering on what I wanted it to deliver on, but also providing me with more than I could have ever anticipated. We love to see it. The quintessential post-work errand is currently being run, and that is going to Costco. We came in for literally 3 things.
Yeah, like literally.
And I know, look at us now. Post Costco pasta being put together. I cooked some zucchini. Everything will be mixed together soon. But I got some of this spicy vodka pasta sauce. Carbone a la Costco. So we're gonna try that. And watch some more Drive to Survive tonight, I think. So, let's get to it. And dinner is served. Hello. I am in bed getting ready to read, but I actually owe y'all a reading update because, hello, look at that. I have read a lot of this book today. So I'm on page 249. So, making excellent progress. I think I'm just under halfway. I am loving this book so much. From the characters to the character interactions, the unlikely pairing of everyone. Like, I am both laughing out loud but also on the edge of my seat because the plot is also getting much more intense as more things from the past are uncovered, and just like as we begin to learn more about the villain of this world, and then also just like, yes, there is this sort of alien entity that is super dangerous that could be coming back to present day, but there's also just like evil people in the present. Obviously one of our characters literally fled from a terrible situation. And everyone, even in the group, is definitely like hiding their own secrets about their past or their wants and all of these things. So all of that has, so there's definitely an element of that going on too. And then we have this fantasy world that has this like weird steampunk element to it, which I was not expecting. You know, not just in the aliens, who are these like giant machine mecha-like beasts that are, you know, ruins, but we have trains and we have industry and factories, and it's, I don't know, there's so many things going on. You would think would feel convoluted and like not working, but it's working, which I am thrilled about. So there's that. So I'm gonna do some more reading, fall asleep, and then I will check in with you guys in the morning. Hello, I wish I could say good morning, but it's actually well into the afternoon, but we're having coffee nevertheless. It's still hot even. And I am gonna sit down and do some reading, though I owe y'all a reading update because I have read so much of Ninth Reign and I'm obsessed. But hi. Okay, reading update time because I love this book. I've already bought the sequel. Because I'm loving this book so much. I've spoken kind of ad nauseum about how this book has taken me by surprise, how unique the inputs are, but I really feel like that can't be overstated because it's so true. I've read a lot of fantasy books in my day, and it's not to say that I can't be surprised anymore, but it is nice to be surprised, especially when I feel like I was picking up a book that initially felt sort of clear like what to anticipate. But anyway, I'm just like deep into the plot of this story, and I am obsessed with all of our main characters. I love Vintage, but I especially love Tor, and I especially love Noon. I love their vampire witch background. I love their complexities of who they are and like kind of their very unique personalities, and I also love seeing them interact with each other. I love how everyone interacts with each other. It's both wholesome and funny and interesting, and these moments of lightness interspersed throughout this story that is also quite dark is good. And I also feel like the author does such a great job making you care about these characters quickly. You also get a sense of their personalities quickly. The banter, everything about it is like working so well. And then you combine that with this plot, which allows us, because they're sort of questing, researching, doing investigations, we are able to travel across large swaths of this land. They're also being pursued for a variety of different reasons, so it's intense but also varied. It allows us to move to all of these different locations and watch them sort of get in and out of trouble, and it just keeps it so fresh and interesting. The plot line of them just like looking for stuff, learning about stuff is interesting regardless, but there's also this larger plot line, as I've mentioned, of this sort of like ancient alien possibly coming to bring everyone's doom. But even that is not so straightforward, and we get chapters and perspectives of other people who are involved in this world, and like seeing all the pieces sort of begin to come together is just so interesting. World building is so clear. The aesthetics of the characters, their vibe, so clear. It just feels distinct. And I'm just having such a good time. So I'm gonna sit down and read some now. I'll have a little midday break before I get back to doing things I need to do today. But I wanted to do a reading update because I'm having such a good time. And I feel like I've mentioned a few times in videos recently, I feel like I've definitely read some really excellent books this year that I've loved. But I feel like it's been a second since I've read things that I've like truly been obsessed with. But I feel these past couple weeks I've definitely read some books I've loved, which makes me feel back on track and also just motivates me to read in general, because like when you're just obsessed with something, you're like, can't get enough, I gotta keep reading, I gotta read more stuff like this, and it revives the soul, you know? But cheers. Anyway, it's time to read. I'm gonna read right now. Mission accomplished. Look at this reading progress. Things are also getting so unbelievably intense. I'll hopefully maybe finish this tonight. We'll see. Matilda and I are getting our Bravo Fix Housewife premiere tonight. And I have my big old bag of Swedish candy as well. So 10 out of 10. And now we're about to go read here soon too. Hello, good morning. I have my coffee and we're gonna do a little bit of a reading sprint together. So let's read. Matilda is sunbathing, as she likes to do. Clay's doing the dishes. And I got up this morning and made some homemade blackberry and raspberry scones, which turned out delicious. They're the Allison Roman recipe. I will have them linked below. And I have a reading update for you. Hello. Good news, everyone. We're about to have a very relaxing day. Coffee is being brewed. I'm gonna start a new puzzle. Clay's supposed to be getting my puzzle table right now. Sir. But I wanted to do a reading update because I have finished Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, which is 530 pages. But I'm happy to report I really liked this book. I've heard such good things about this, but I also wasn't really anticipating like how unusual and unique the world was, how strange and peculiar kind of the magical elements of this, and how compelled I would be with the characters, and the plot reveals at the end of this just like completely sold me. I was invested in this book and story, honestly, from page one. It was such a like, at no point was I like, wow, this book needs to pick up the pace, or it's dragging, or that felt rushed. Like, I was just pleased through and through from page one to the end. I cannot wait to read book two. I'm so endeared to the characters. I love Noon and Tor and Vintage. I love their strange names within a fantasy setting. That in itself is fun. I love the sort of sci-fi ancient technology sort of spin, but we also have magical creatures like witches and vampires who, you know, in a different type of fantasy setting work so well. Also, the lore of this world is really interesting. We have these like giant behemoth sort of strange creatures that are from an ancient enemy. We also have lore around like magical beasts of all kinds. It's almost like this author decided to take like every fantasy component, put it in a blender from like steampunk to urban fantasy to high fantasy, and she sort of created this book. And honestly, it works so well. I loved the quest element. I loved the multiple perspectives we got to read across all the different chapters. I loved the writing. I loved the romantic elements of this book, which I wasn't even anticipating. Like, honestly, everything was a hit for me, and I'm very obsessed with this series. So I'm so happy to say that. Like, this was like everything I could have wanted and more, over-delivered. Today, I'm also going to be starting my second book of this vlog, which is Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner, which I'm also hoping to love very, very much. And another really like stunning cover, if you ask me. So that's my plan. I've already read 530 pages. I'm hoping to read at least 200 pages of this, get halfway through before I end this vlog. I will keep you all posted, but for now, think I'm gonna heat up a scone, have some coffee, and start watching the England-Spain soccer game. So cheers to that, everyone. So in progress. It's another one of my circle of color puzzles, but this time it's bugs, which is so cute and fun. So I've been working on this. It's rotisserie chicken Sunday. We got a smoke roasted chicken. Obviously my mashed potatoes. There's Clay. I also made some breaded like zucchini fries and of course some broccoli. Bon appetit. Exciting times because we are about to watch. What episode are we on? What's the episode? Episode 5? 5. We're on episode 5. Let's watch. Great news. House of the Dragon episode 5. Excellent. If anything, it almost felt like the most Games of Thrones-y episodes since House of the Dragon has started. I've enjoyed House of the Dragon, but I always felt like the pacing was really quick, where things were introduced and resolved in almost the same episode. Anyway, this past episode was like intense and good, but it was really all about threads and like setting up the board in an interesting way. And I just found myself on the edge of my seat without needing like a bunch of dragon action, which I love dragon action, but it's nice I just feel like the show is starting to really catch its stride in terms of the larger scale aspect of the politicking of this war and conflict, and I'm very into it, and I'm very excited for next week's episode. Damon needs to get out of Harrenhal though. There were some Harrenhal moments in this episode where I screamed from horror in more ways than one. But anyway, I'm now going to go read. I want to start Sunbringer. I need to read Sunbringer, so I'll keep y'all posted. Good morning, everyone. I have some coffee, and I'm gonna have one of my leftover scones soon. Matilda's doing her morning routine, which is sit in chair and blanket, look out window, which she basically does all day. So I'm glad she's getting an early start. I am gonna sit down and read my book. Hello, good morning everyone. I have been reading and I have a reading update of my second book of this vlog, which is Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. This, as a reminder, is the second book to a trilogy. I read the first one, God Killer, last year and I really enjoyed it. This series is a multi-POV tale set in a world that once was comprised of like many gods. There's basically these different fantasy landscapes, these different kingdoms, and here gods ruled for better or for worse, and there was like thousands of different gods, from major gods like god of fire, god of the sea, god of the winds, to minor gods, gods of specific rivers, of specific forests, of specific actions and acts within various locations. And like with anything, some gods were neutral or just kind of normal in their functioning within society. Some gods were good, some gods overused their power for evil or for their own gain. So obviously this created a complicated situation wherein which one of the kingdoms basically fought back, destroyed all the gods, and basically outlawed the practice of worshiping gods, because worship and offerings and tokens give gods power. So if no one's worshiping them, in theory, they should all disappear. At the beginning of book 1, we're introduced to a variety of characters. First is a young girl named Inara, and she herself has a god in her pocket, and they have been joined since for as long as she can remember, and she basically wants to set out into the world to basically figure out why they're connected and also help her god like find his own shrine, because they're like BFFs, they're close friends, they have a really good camaraderie, and she seeks out the services of a god killer who, before the war, god killers were obviously a profession that was deeply looked down upon, and while their reputations have not improved, they're now, let's just say, a very in-demand profession by the crown, because they specialize in going after, destroying shrines, and also preventing gods from getting too strong of a foothold within the kingdom itself. And that is our other main character, Kissian. And Kissian has a complicated past with gods, but she's also incredibly skilled in what she does, and she hates gods, but she decides to take up this unexpected job of helping this young girl, Inara, and her god of white lies to get to safety and like try to help them out, because obviously, you know, she has a heart of gold at the end of the day. And then from there we meet our other main character, Elo, who is a knight of the king who basically led the campaign to overthrow the gods, and he's setting out on a quest to kind of solve a very specific issue to help his best friend. All of these characters sort of come into each other's lives and they begin traveling with one another on a quest to the same location, and they have to overcome lots of different trials and tribulations. Book one was a story I really enjoyed. I particularly loved the characters and the found family. I appreciated that we had sort of a multi-POV situation. You felt really grounded in these characters. You liked these characters. It was like not cozy because the story is really intense, but there's like cozy elements. Like you got the sense that all of these people were really just trying their best, and if the world let them live like a nice normal life, but given the circumstances of how they've had to live, unfortunately that is currently not a choice for them. I loved seeing them grow and begin to trust one another, and then also just learning about the world in itself. The concept of this book I think is really interesting with how the author has kind of woven in gods into the lore, into the history, into the political makeup of these different fantasy kingdoms. I think that's really cool. And also the complicated nature of religion and worship in the way that, you know, in the same way that some gods overuse their power, banning all gods and preventing people from worshiping or working with minor gods or major gods might not necessarily be the answer either. And just this like larger fantasy conspiracy that's kind of involved within the story itself. I really love the progression of book one, very quest centered, all of that. So going into book two, I was excited, and I will say plot-wise, things pick up exactly where we left off. Structurally, there are some interesting changes. The writing style, which I really, really, really enjoy, the stylization of the story is consistent, and the characters who I already feel close to continues to persist throughout the first part of this book, which I've read. I've read about just under 30% of it so far. There are some story structure changes in that before we had this like very found family core, but now given the plot, kind of things are happening on a more solo perspective. But I do feel like, because I feel attached to them, I feel like I can root for them to explore these different storylines and follow them where they need to go, depending based on like what's going on in the story. But I will say I do miss that dynamic that was present within the first book, but I also understand. I feel like there's a lot more lore building within this, and the inclusion of gods within this story is also increased, which I like. I feel like I understand more about how the gods work, the breadth of gods in terms of like there are so many of them that have like different skills and people's connections to these gods. I just think it's really interesting, and I feel like that aspect of the story is definitely beefing up a bit. I feel like at this point where I'm in the book, it's definitely kind of a slow build. We're not resetting the story, but I feel like the author is obviously focused on setting up the pieces for the end game of this trilogy. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of stuff to sort of explore, and we've got things that need to unfold. So I just feel like the pacing has been maybe a bit slower in this first part that I've read, but I'm not enjoying it. I think the writing style is strong. Again, the characters are strong, and I really like this world. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next because, yeah, I just think this story is really unique and interesting. It's not perfect, but I do feel like a lot of the elements are quite good. So I'm gonna keep reading. We're gonna see how far I get today. I'm hoping to get to page 200, but I will keep you guys posted. A sandwich has been made. I take sandwich making incredibly seriously. I love sandwiches. Hi friends, and welcome to the end of the vlog. The next day, I just wanted to pop in and wrap everything I was able to read because I've read a lot this vlog. But starting first and foremost with Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner, I was able to read 200 pages of this book. So I'm about halfway through this story, which isn't too bad. I have to say I am liking this book. I wouldn't say I'm liking it as much as the first book. I think the writing style is still fantastic. The world is interesting, and there's been a lot of steps to kind of expand our understanding of this world with world building, lore building, which I appreciate. And I think all of the different interactions with gods is actually very, very, very cool. I love all of the characters still, and I think reading from their perspectives and how the author centers them and their emotions and their individual journeys has been great. But the found family element that we sort of got in book one has sort of been separated for the time being, and we're kind of following all these individual solo journeys, which is nice, but probably one of my favorite parts of God Killer book one was that found family component and the interactions and the dynamics between all of those characters. So it's hard for me to say I love it as much because I just want them to be together so desperately. But I do feel like the writing style has been consistently strong and the world is becoming a lot more realized with some really great work there within this second book. Plot has definitely gripped me. It's definitely slower paced within the first half, but I am looking forward to finishing this book and just overall seeing what in the world is going to happen and then get primed and ready for book 3 within this series. But still a solid novel and a solid fantasy series, especially if you want something that's like a little more character focused. And then obviously in this vlog, I also read the entirety of Ninth Reign. I loved this book so much. I honestly can say I don't think I've read something quite like this ever. If you're a fan of like The Tainted Cup or Senlin Ascends or just like those fantasy novels that are just a little bit off the beaten path in terms of their influences, their world building, like they're a little weird, a little mysterious, but you also want like found family, great characters, banter, humor, and like also a really intense fantasy plotline, like this is the series for you. I was hooked immediately by this book. The writing style, just how everything kind of came together. I bought the sequel already. Like I feel like I'm gonna marathon this trilogy throughout the rest of this year and I cannot wait. This book was 520 pages and then this book was 530 pages and then I also read 200 pages of this book. So 730 pages read over the course of this vlog. Not bad at all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye.